Hello, my name's Rich, and I'm an idiot. Surely not, you're thinking. I haven't come all this way to listen to an idiot speak. I'm afraid you have. And today I want to tell you 3 things. That I am an idiot, that maybe you're an idiot, and how to idiot. If I've spoken to you before, or you saw me this morning, you might not need much persuasion on the first point. But maybe some of what I'm going to say later on is going to resonate with you, and you're going to start to wonder, maybe I want to be in this idiot club because of all the cool and successful people that are in it. And if so, you're going to be interested in point 3. Because I'm going to tell you how I unleash the power of idiocy to achieve, if not greatness, then at least non-terribleness. So let's move on. Step 1. I am an idiot. That's me on the left. How can I prove this to you? I'm standing in a room full of potential colleagues, clients, employers, in front of a massive slide that says I'm an idiot, wearing this t-shirt. That's not the smartest move in the book, is it? I'm giving a talk in public, which makes me incredibly nervous. I didn't have to do this. I could have come here for free by reviewing the talks, or I could have bought a ticket, or I could have stayed at home in bed. But I came here to do this talk. Why? I regularly get confused at the most basic and simple things in life. I'll give you an example. I've got 2 young daughters, and they have drawers for their clothes. 2 drawers each. It's the same way I do my clothes. I work at home, so I do all the laundry while Xcode is recovering from crashes or processing symbols or whatever it is it spends most of its time doing. So when I'm doing the laundry and putting clothes away, I think, well, 2 drawers. 1 drawer for tops, 1 drawer for bottoms. That's how I do my clothes. That's the only way that makes sense. So I put their clothes away, and there's a t-shirt, yeah, that's a top. Leggings, that's a bottom. A dress. Is a dress a top or a bottom? I don't know. Science doesn't know. I give myself a different answer every single time, which is probably one of the reasons it takes my kids so long to get changed. I blunder about with a similar level of confusion at work, which means that sometimes, in the cold, dark nights, I get the fear. The fear that I don't belong here. The fear that I'm only doing this job until I get found out. I've got no programming or computer science training. I was a biochemist, and then I was a chef, and then I went back to being a biochemist again. I tried to cure cancer. That is really hard. Then I worked at a bone marrow registry and a blood bank, and then I thought, I'd quite fancy being a programmer. But I couldn't get a job anywhere because I've had nothing to do with programming my entire life. The only place I could get a job was at a company that had written its own programming language, so nobody that ever applied there knew how to write in it. So while I was working there and sort of learning the art of programming, which is kind of generally applicable to everything, I taught myself Objective-C, I taught myself how to make iOS apps, and I managed to trick my way into a job where someone would pay me to write iOS apps. But I've never had one of those interviews. If you asked me to implement a binary sort on a whiteboard, I'd have 2 problems. Problem number 1, I don't know what a binary sort is. Problem number 2, I'm left-handed, so when I write on the whiteboard, it just gets wiped out. In fact, there's 3 problems, because my writing is illegibly bad. When I'm coding, there's certain kinds of mistake I make all the time. For example, the greater than and less than operators. I always get those confused. Even though I know the rule about the hungry crocodile, it just doesn't sit in my brain when I'm typing it. The same with min and max. If you were in Caroline's talk this morning, she had a thing where she did the min of this and the max of that and 0, and it was supposed to be either 1 or 0. Every time I try and do that, I always get it wrong. And today, I work with some super smart people at an agency called Martiancraft. And I don't know if you've heard of Martiancraft, but the people that founded Martiancraft literally wrote the books on how to make iOS apps. So you can easily imagine that I sometimes feel like I don't belong there, that these people probably can use the greater than or less than operator correctly the first time they try. But this is fine. If you think you're the best person in the room, you're either wrong or you're in the wrong room. That's not my drink. If I'm working or chatting at a conference or on Twitter or Slack with people, and I think, oh, this person, they're so much smarter than me, they're so much better than me, that's great. That's my chance to learn something from them. But, and this is my key point, or one of my key points, it's entirely possible that those people feel the same way as well. It's entirely possible that we're all idiots, and successful people are just good at idioting. So, hopefully we've established my first point, that I am an idiot, and I'm quite relaxed about the situation. This is the slightly harder part of the talk. I have to convince you that maybe you're an idiot. So the first thing to do, the way I'm going to do this, is I've collected some quotes from people who I've lumped together under the term high-performing idiots. I'm hoping that some of these quotes are going to resonate with you, and you're going to think, oh yeah, I've been like that, I've been in that situation. And then maybe you're going to start to think you're an idiot as well. Programming is a binary endeavor. You either feel like an idiot, or you feel like a genius. We've all had that moment where you've been trying to do something all day, and it's just not been working, it's not been working, it's not been working, then suddenly a light goes on, and you're a genius. You've made this thing, it's amazing. That transition, that feeling when you go, is probably the main reason that I do this job. I absolutely love it. The transition back from the genius state to the idiot state is not so enjoyable. But I think it was William Shakespeare that said, life is a roller coaster, you just got to ride it. This is from Alexis. If you're in Alexis's talk this morning, you're thinking, that man's not an idiot. Well, look here. No one really knows how to code, and we're all stumbling around on a barren heath praying for deliverance. He's very poetic, isn't he? You must have had days where you've just been trying random things to solve a problem. You've been trying to do it so long, you're just trying anything that will work. And then all of a sudden, you fixed it. You just commit it and move on. 10 years of being a full-time programmer, I still have no idea how anything works. How does it all work, really? I mean, I think most people know about the level of technology they work at, and maybe a little bit about the levels above and below that. But the human brain can't encompass the amount of knowledge it needs to be an expert in something like SpriteKit and be an expert in everything else, all the way down to the subatomic physics that makes an electron dance around inside a chip. There is too much knowledge in this field for somebody to know it all. You can't do it. Don't expect to try and know everything. This is a great one. The most important skill for programmers is being comfortable having no idea what you're doing. Almost every time I start something, I'm very comfortable with this feeling. When Swift first came out, I'd happened to be at the start of a brand new project at work, and I thought, I had one of my great ideas, I'm going to do this in Swift. What a great opportunity. So you start the new project drop down, you choose the language, Swift, comes up. How do I Swift? I don't know. That's fine. That's okay. That's how you learn things. Are you a new developer? Are things hard? I've been doing this for about 7 years and just lost 30 minutes of my life to a single rogue space. Xcode is not very keen on characters it doesn't like hanging around in places that it doesn't want them to be. And with Swift in Xcode, your problem down here gives you an error message up there, and it can take a very long time to figure out what's happening. So hopefully you've been able to relate to some of these situations, and you're now feeling ready to join my idiot club. If you're still not convinced, here's a recent search of commit messages that you can't actually read. But it says, I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot. It's a big club. We've got a very open membership policy. If you're still not convinced, then maybe you're in the hazard phase on this graph. This is a graph, therefore it's science. if you can read the captions, you've got the orange line is how much I think I know, the blue line is how much you actually know, and the green line is how much more I realize there is to know. So let's assume that I've convinced you that you're idiots. We can move on to the third part of the talk. How to idiot. The first step in successful idioting is to keep in your brain the idea the whole time that you're an idiot. Don't give your idiot brain too much to do. Don't try and remember everything. Write stuff down. Use a task list. Use a code snippet manager. Write notes. As soon as you get a flash of understanding where you think you've figured out how something works, write it down, because tomorrow you will have forgotten. Don't hold all this stuff in your head. Your head can't do that. It's not how brains work. And when you're doing your work, keep on remembering that you're an idiot. Now, the co-worker whose code I spend the most time looking at is probably me. And as we've established, I'm an idiot. But I quite like my code, and other people like my code, and it works, and I get things done on time. How do I manage that despite being an idiot? I manage it by using my idiocy to make better code. I write for an idiot. I've worked on a lot of what we call rescue projects, where you get some steaming pile of an app delivered, and the client says, we just can't get it to work, and we've got this release next week. And the standout problem in these projects is always that it's too complicated. You can't look at it and think, oh, I know what this code is doing. You have to really, really think about it and tear it to pieces, and it shouldn't be like that. You should be able to look at a piece of code and understand what it means on a certain scale. If I don't understand what a section of code is doing, or how it's doing it, or why it's doing it, then it doesn't get to stay like that when the app leaves my care. It might just need comments, it might need a couple of things renaming, or it might need complete rewriting, but it doesn't get to stay the way it is. I don't know who the next idiot to look at that code is going to be. It could be me. So I always write for the next idiot that's going to come along, the next idiot that has to be able to read and understand the code, which means you write your code to be read. You spend far more time reading code than you spend writing it. I strongly believe that writing code should be treated like writing prose, mainly because I've always fancied myself as a novelist, but I could never get anyone but Ray to pay me to write a book. It means I try to write code that tells a story, that passes my ideas into the mind of the person that's reading it. There's a cautionary note here. I'm talking about the kind of prose you might have bought in the airport on the way to this conference. James Joyce would not have been a good coder. He'd probably have used Perl. And there's another thing I bear in mind when treating my code as prose. I'm probably doing it wrong. Like prose, there are limitless ways to write anything. If there are limitless ways to write anything, then statistically speaking, the way you're writing it is wrong. If it's not wrong, it might not be perfect. It might not be the best way of doing it. But that's not so important. It's more important that what you've written works and is easy to change than that it's perfect, because it will never be perfect. I've learned to get comfortable with that idea. It doesn't matter if what I'm writing isn't the best or the cleverest or the most elegant or the most beautiful way of writing it. If it's understandable and someone else can understand it, and if you're really feeling good about it, it's got tests, it's much easier to refactor that working code later on than it is to spend a day agonizing over your design pattern, because your customers and your users don't care. They just want an app that works. And if you have this idea in your mind that you're probably doing it wrong, that any part of this app could be rewritten at any point in the future, out of that thinking evolves a more sensible and decoupled architecture. Is this bit too big, you ask yourself? How hard would it be to dump this bit and put something else in instead? If you continually ask yourself these questions while you're writing, you end up with a fairly sensible structure. And there's another question you must ask yourself when you're writing. Am I getting too clever? I've got more quotes about this. This is a famous one. Debugging is twice as hard as writing a program in the first place. So if you're as clever as you can be when you write it, how will you ever debug it? Clever code is unfixable. Most of the code I've written I feel clever about, I regret a few weeks later. Clever code is like eating an entire bloomin' onion from Outback, which I intend to do on this trip, by the way. You feel quite proud of yourself at the time, but you pay a price later on. 16 years of programming, the biggest takeaway, 5 simple words: don't try to be clever. Clever code is not good code. Cleverness in code is not a virtue. I spent last summer working on educational materials, teaching people how to use Swift, people that had no computer knowledge whatsoever. It was absolutely fascinating to go back to first principles, to take away all of the knowledge I'd accumulated in my own head. What is a variable? What is a constant? How do you tell a computer what to do? And Swift allows you to express those ideas really, really, really clearly. But unfortunately, it also allows you to write incomprehensible nonsense. And writing incomprehensible nonsense in Swift is kind of the emperor's new clothes of our community at the moment. What's this code doing? This is on Twitter. Who puts code on Twitter? There are entire blogs filled with stuff like this, though. Can you tell what it's doing without moving your lips? Would you be able to tell again in 3 months' time? Even the code's confused about itself. Look, it's got a face in the middle. Don't be that blogger. Don't write code like that. Don't let code like that through code review. Don't encourage people to do code like that. Idiots can't understand code like that. Yes, you can do things like this. You can use custom operators. You can wrap things in things that process things and give you a thing, all in one line of code. But are you actually helping anyone? Or are you just masturbating in public about how clever you are? How many hipster language features you can cram into this one little snippet? Who are you helping with code like this? And don't tell me that this is easy to reason about. It's not. Brevity is not clarity. Right for reading, right for idiots. That was a small rant. I can now move on to slightly more positive things you can do as an idiot. You can ask for help. This is what Ash was talking about. Ash isn't there anymore. People are afraid to ask for help. They don't want to look stupid. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing, unless they work on Ash's team. They don't want to expose themselves as not being an expert. This is ridiculous. People shouldn't feel like that. If you're afraid to ask questions, how do you think the people that you're scared to ask the questions of got to know the things that they know? Asking for help is simply how it's done. It's not a situation where it's you who knows nothing and someone else who knows everything. You simply have overlapping areas of knowledge. So in these two diagrams, if you're stood in the middle of that blue circle and you look around, you're surrounded by yellow, but the truth is closer to the right than to the left. If you make asking questions and answering questions part of your team's culture, you'll be happier and more productive, as we've already heard. If you work alone, or your colleagues are idiots, then you can ask questions on Stack Overflow. Here, you can ask questions about the things you don't know in front of every developer on the planet. I'm going to do a quick show of hands. Who uses Stack Overflow? Can you imagine doing this job without Stack Overflow? You need to keep your hands up. I didn't say that, but I'm saying it now. Keep your hand up if you've asked a question on Stack Overflow. Keep your hand up if you've answered a question on Stack Overflow. Keep your hand up if you've searched Stack Overflow, found an answer, and it was yours from a year ago. Because apparently you keep forgetting how to do this thing. When you're asking a question on a site like Stack Overflow, you need to use your idiocy. You have to explain things clearly. Don't add confusing extra details. Imagine that your question is going to be read by idiots, because it will. And a lot of those idiots are going to try and answer your question. How does an idiot answer a question successfully? You use your idiocy. You ask clarifying questions if you don't understand. This is a great trick because sometimes you just say, oh, what is this bit here doing? And then that person suddenly realizes that that bit there is their entire problem. And they get to feel great because they've actually solved their own problem. You get to feel great because you've helped them solve their own problem, but you didn't need to know anything. Remember how it feels when you don't know something and how hard it can be to ask for help. Don't act surprised that somebody doesn't know something that you know. You didn't know it once. Don't belittle someone for having the self-awareness to know what they don't know. Give simple answers, but give clear answers with reasons behind them. Don't just dump a load of code on people and say, try this. Oh, that's hard. Try this. Try this. And you might not know the answer to the question. This is fine. You can move on, or you can do a bit of research and try and find the answer yourself. I'd learned a lot by doing that on Stack Overflow. I'd answer questions I had no idea what the answer was, and I had to go and find out all about the thing. You can learn a lot more. It gives you a broader range of things to get involved in than simply making a project, because that will usually be constrained to a few areas. So a strategy for successful idioting boils down to these 2 points. You have to communicate clearly with yourself and with the other idiots. It's much more important to be clear than to be clever. You have to realize that your idioting overlaps with the idioting of others. And if between us, we can build amazing things if we help each other and work together. There's too much knowledge in the world from one idiot to keep it all in their head. So we literally do have to share it. There's no other way. Thank you very much, idiots.